Welcome to another episode of Roll or Die. Today's guest is another repeat guest. He has been on twice before. Check out episodes 15 and 99 in our back catalogue to hear the previous episodes. He is the head coach of Dominance here in Melbourne. He's a 4th degree black belt, and he is Dave Hart. Thanks for joining us today.
What's up, guys?
Awesome to see you, mate. Awesome to have you on. The last couple of episodes we've had Kim and Anton, so this is the first time that I get to have you on, being the newer dude from Roll or Die. So, first thing, mate, you're the king of nicknames to me. You come up with loads of nicknames for loads of people. Have you always done that? Has that always been like part of something that you've done?
A little bit. And most of them are organic. They just come up through training. Some of them are complimentary. Some of them not so much. But yeah, it happens a little bit. I think as well because you end up quite often when you're running a gym, you end up with like 45 Steves in the room, and you got to figure out a way to tell them apart. And when I started, I was Little Dave because Big Dave's Big Dave.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just been something that's kind of happened organically, I guess.
I was talking to a mate of mine, Jay, in America the other day, and he was talking about one of the guys who trains with him. He's been training with him for ages, and his nickname's 8 Mile. I'm like, what do you mean 8 Mile? He goes, bro, he's a white rapper. Of course he's fucking 8 Mile.
Yeah, legit. Yeah, that's spot on.
You're just saying, but you just come up with ones that really seem to suit,
Yeah, you kind of do. I think it's probably part of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu culture a little bit because nicknames are really common in Brazil as well. So probably it's a little bit of a knock on from that. And also, I grew up in the country too, so nicknames are pretty normal there as well. I'm not sure if it's the case for city folk, sophisticated city people. Busy drinking their Thai lattes.
The last 2 episodes that you were on, Dave, was before I and myself and my husband joined Dominance. So it's probably known to many of us that the start of last year, I moved out of my area and I joined Dominance, and it's been amazing. Like, I think I re-listened to that last episode the other day that we had, and it was really interesting for me to hear your thoughts around or your explanation of training and how you coach and things like that. But now as a student of Dominance, and I'm seeing that for myself, like I have just a whole new appreciation. So for anybody that might not have heard that last episode, go back if you can to have a listen to episode 99 where Dave sort of explains about how he coaches and how he explains things in such a way that it's crazy. Like, I've been doing jiu-jitsu more than 15 years, but it's been so enlightening for me to learn this way. I almost feel like I was homeschooled, and now I've got some formal structure to my training, and I've got some yeah. So can you just, in a sort of a nutshell, just break down how it is that you go about like demonstrating a technique or running a class, for instance, just for our listeners?
Yeah, I guess a little bit of framework for how we approach things. One of the things that we realized many, many years ago was the most important split to have of skill. If you're thinking about, you've got your team of like day one white belt all the way through to your most experienced black belt, and most gyms would split their class based on skill. They'd take the white belts into a separate class, and then they have blue belts and up in an advanced class. The most important split to have for skill when you're teaching is actually taking the 0 stripe white belts away from everybody else. That's the number one split. If you could only split into 2 groups, that would be it. And then if you can split again after that, then you'd separate off your color belts, basically blue with maybe your 4 stripe white belts. And if you could split again after that, then you'd probably have a pro session. So the intro course that we have, which is for our 0 stripe white belts, is structured and has a curriculum that rotates through. I think it's got about 14 modules in it. And each week we know what the classes are going to be, and each day we know what the classes are going to be. when we're teaching for the fundamentals group, so that would be from one stripe white belt and up. And the same is true for our advanced classes and our pro classes, in the sense that the structure is not as formally locked down for the whole year, because we have to have some flexibility based on what's happening in the meta, what's happening with our team, where do we see some gaps that we want to take advantage of, where do I see some things that we need to sharpen up in our team so we can't be taken advantage of. And also some flexibility in a theme that I might plan on map out, say it's going to be a 2-week theme. Sometimes it will expand and end up being 3 weeks. It might not be moving as fast as I want, or I might want to cover some more information. So I'm really looking at what's happening in the room and how the group is responding to it. So there's a little bit of room for flexibility, even though we've still got a plan. But the structure for each class, so we've got our weekly structure, and then we've got our individual class structure, and there'll be a rough, not rough, there'll be a pretty good idea of the sequence of the techniques that we want to have for the week, and a pretty good idea of the order that would work best. And then each individual class, we're going to make sure that, so the old school Brazilian way of doing things would be sometimes even as loose as, it's kind of like an open mat where occasionally the coach will stop you like, hey guys, check this idea out, and all right, go back to rolling. So sometimes it could be that loose. Where we run a warm up that's built around trying to build some actual basic skills. We have a really clear technique that we're trying to teach for the day, and trying to build skills on. And I will demonstrate the technique, explain the framework that sits in. So where does that actually sit within the positions, and what are we trying to do, and why are we trying to do it? And then demonstrate the actual technique a couple of times, explaining the key points. Then I'll talk the class through the technique a couple of times to make sure they get the main chunks of it, like steps of it. Usually the class will then drill that technique for a period, and then we'll come back together and we're going to troubleshoot. There's going to be some questions. So there'll be some common questions that will be coming up in that 10 minutes of drilling. Then we'll come back in, address those questions, deal with some other odds and ends that might be coming up, add some more detail into it. So I find that once the students get the broad strokes of the technique, then we can start actually drilling down onto some more details. Then we want to try to get some semi-live drilling in. So that'll be drilling with limited resistance. It might be with some limited constraints as well. And then after that, we're going to do some more, like some fully live specific training, and then we'll get into the rounds. So the classes are structured to work particular skills, and they build resistance through the progression of the class as the students start to pick up the actual skills.
So we're kind of talking about like the acquisition of skills and then leading into fluency, right? So in regards to that, Dave, are there, as a student, are there specific things that we should be aware of to make sure that we are getting that fluency, whether it's quicker or smoother? Like, what sorts of things should students be doing?
Yeah, that's a good question, because one of the things that I noticed that some students will do, and I'd be guilty of this as well when I was a white belt. I was a shit training partner when I was a white belt. Whenever my partner was drilling techniques on me, and like it was their turn to practice, I was always like figuring out how to like defend it, and just being a shit training partner. I wasn't letting them work because I was just busy like trying to figure out the defense, but being like too defensive and too rigid and too and too resistant. So one of the things I would suggest is that you need to limit the amount of resistance when you're trying to learn the motor patterns. Yeah, when you're just trying to develop motor patterns, it's not the time to have a lot of resistance from your partner. Now, your partner they're not dead. They're still participating in the drilling by putting themselves in the right position. They can't be completely floppy. They can't be too rigid. So they've still got to be some sense of liveness from them. But we need to make sure that there's the right amount of liveness and the right amount of cooperation from them. Otherwise, we minimize the efficiency of the drilling. But understanding that the first phase is of learning is about learning the motor patterns. When we're talking about the actual drilling phase, we're trying to learn motor patterns. Then as we start to understand how to move through the sequence, then we can start to add some resistance from our partner or some reactions. So one of the things that tends to happen though is a lot of time that students will tend to jump from just trying to gather the motor patterns into like almost fully resistant, like live training too quickly. It takes some time, and it will vary from one student to another, trying to actually get your body used to moving through that sequence and get a feel for the position, the balance, the timing. Where does your weight want to be? And that is done when things are slower and more playful and explorative. We might have touched on this last time we spoke, but in order to actually learn, so that um, the stress function that gets triggered when things are highly competitive essentially shuts down your ability to absorb new information. You just can't learn. And so it will, just having hard hit outs all the time will make you tough, but it won't necessarily make you better. And you guys have all heard that phrase before. So for after skill acquisition, then we actually want to dial back the intensity of the training. And that means you can still roll live, but you need to be more focused on exploring than winning. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. So when we're looking at our students during the course of the week, so Monday to Thursday is for skill acquisition. Friday is for hard hit out. So that's comp training, when we're like, all right, we do what we've got to do to win on Friday. And then Saturday, it's about correction of issues that were coming up on the Friday, and helping to identify some of those things. And then we go into the next week and the process starts again. But I think one of the biggest issues that people run into is they don't do enough of the very cooperative training, or their training partners are not doing what they need to do to learn, and they feel like they're being a bit soft if they try to correct their training partner. So if Kim and I were training and she was trying to develop a particular skill, that might be a particular passing idea, and I'm giving too much resistance, being too live, and it's not allowing her to develop any feel for it, and she's tentative to actually say, hey, I need you to dial it back and just do a little bit more of this and a little bit less of that. If she doesn't do that, then a lot of that drilling time is going to be wasted. And a lot of the time, I think we're really shy about letting our partner know what it is that we want of them to maximize our gains from that drilling. And you think about it, we don't have a lot of time to drill. And most people, if they're training only once a day, there might be 10 to 20 minutes of drilling in the class. And if that drilling is not structured the right way for you, if your partner is not doing the things that you need for you to best actually practice their technique, then a lot of it's wasted. So I'd say that one of the most valuable things is actually getting your partner to do the things that you need them and want them to do in order to acquire the skills that you're trying to develop.
One of the biggest differences that I've noticed, or one of the things that struck me immediately when I first joined Dominance, and people who come to visit or who also join have also commented, is just the level of the white belts and the fundamentals are just rock solid. And I think it comes from what you were saying about that being seen by you guys, by the coaches, as almost the most important. Can you talk about what are you looking for in a blue belt? So what do they need to do to be able to be, in your eyes, worthy of a blue belt? Because
that's a great question.
The level of the white belt that they are.
Yep. I'll preface all this by saying that that fundamentals first, and it's not to the exclusion of developing your, for example, like for lack of a better phrase, like unique skills, and whether that unique skill is to have an amazing armbar or a berimbolo or something that's kind of a bit out there and a bit fancy. It's not to the exclusion of that, but we just make sure that the fundamentals are being developed through that white to blue belt phase, because they underpin everything else. And I think the other thing that's really important to understand as well is that a shit blue belt does not magically become a good purple belt. So we have to set the standard really, really early. Now, that means that for some people, sometimes the process from white to blue might take longer with us than it may take somewhere else. Not always, but sometimes. But we make sure that we set the standard really early, and then everything that's built on top of that is solid. So best way to think of it is that a really good blue belt needs to be defensively sound everywhere. Yeah, so you should be able to defend and escape all the major positions fairly comfortably against people who are similar rank and definitely junior to you. So one of the things that I think is the best way to approach jiu-jitsu is that as in defense, we need to be a generalist, because we don't get to choose where we defend. So I might roll with one person, they've got an amazing side control. My side control, escapes, and defense need to be really good. The next person, it might be all about back control. The next person, they might be amazing from mount. So I don't really get to choose where I defend. The next person might have an amazing front headlock. And if I don't have that dialed in, then I'm going to get murdered from there all the time. But in offense, we want to be a specialist. So defensively, a generalist, you need to be very good everywhere. Offense success actually comes from being very, very good at a few things. Very good at a few things. Now, offense, we're talking about attacking from your top positions, your top pins. And so for a blue belt, we don't want them to be amazing at all three of the top pins, being side, mount, and back. Usually they're very good at funneling to the one top pin that they're good at, and then very competent from that one position. You could say as well that offense includes the attacking phases of guard. So they would typically develop one or two guards that they're quite good at, and those one or two guards might have one or two attacks that they're good at. Passing, again, it's more of a defensive approach where you need to be a bit more of a generalist because you don't get to choose the guards that you're passing a lot of the time. That's based more on your partner. So they need to be very competent across all the defensive areas. And then in offense, there's going to be a handful, 2 or 3 areas that they specialize in that they're going to be, their knowledge is going to be like very precise and very deep. And it should be a case of you get someone who's going for one of our blue belts. If they get a purple belt in one of their strong attacking positions, they should have a good shot. They should be able to really threaten a purple belt in their strong offensive positions. And then as you move through the next belts, those attacking positions, the number of attacking positions you're going to have are going to expand. So let's say that as a blue belt, you're all about the mount. Well, then as you're moving through the purple belt, then it might be that we've added back control onto that. Yeah, and then your guards have expanded from 2 guards to maybe 3 or 4 guards.
And then leading forward from that, Dave, something that we hear quite often is, especially at competitions, oh, that guy should be this belt, or that girl should be this belt, or like you hear that a
We
lot.
run into this a little bit.
What are your thoughts on that? Because for me, like everybody does grade differently, and it's not that I don't think that dominance grades harder. This is not my conversation. I don't think dominance grades harder. I think you have relatively strict criteria that people need to meet. And you do that depending on ability, you do that depending on age, you do that depending on body type and all those sorts of things. So it's not like, oh, you need to be elite to be at that belt. But what are your thoughts on that, mate? And when you do hear those sorts of things, what do you say?
This is a funny
How
conversation.
do you politely tell them to fuck off?
Yeah, it's a little bit of that. So there, one of the things I think that's interesting about this, and I think this is something that might be relevant to some of the other coaches out there that might hear this, is that what I've found is that whatever the standard is that we set for the students, they will attain that standard, and it doesn't necessarily impact the timelines. What it might impact is the amount of effort that we need to put in as coaches. So the higher the standard is, the stricter we are on what the expectations are, the more effort we need to put in as coaches to make sure that they get the knowledge that they need to reach those levels, right? Because it's really about competency. So we just want our guys to be good, and we want them to be good, like in their fundamentals across all areas. We don't want someone to get a blue belt just because they're amazing at just one. Maybe they've got one particular guard that they're phenomenal at, but everything else sucks. Like you put them on top of mount and they can't play mount to save their lives. I'm not really interested in that. It's too unbalanced for me. Now, I would, if that guy was to come here, I'm like, yeah, awesome. Have that amazing guard, but let's make sure everything else is good as well. Yeah. So it's like, we want to keep that area that's amazing and just make sure everything else is. So the way I'd say is that our blue belts are blue belts everywhere, and they're probably a purple belt some, in their good spots. That's probably an easy way to think about it. Now, most of the people that make that kind of comment, like, oh, so-and-so sandbagging, these guys need to grade these guys up. Most of the people that say that are white belts and blue belts that don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So it's all good. take it with a grain of salt. The other thing I think that's important to recognize in this as well is that we are taking guys to the worlds and a lot of the majors every year, and our standard that we're working to is the standard that is reaching the podium at international majors. So although guys might be winning competitions here, the VIX, the Nationals, the Pan Pacs, that's great, and they are significant achievements, but it doesn't mean that they're at the level of winning or podiuming at international majors yet. They're two different things. So there's a bigger standard that we've got our eyes set on that we're working towards. That doesn't mean to say that if someone never podiums, at an international competition, that they don't move up through the ranks, because there is more to it than just winning competition. And that was also to say that if someone does win it at any of these competitions, whether it's an international or the Pan Pacs or the Nationals, whatever, that automatically means that they're going to move up through the ranks as well. There's more to it than that for us. But yeah, most of the time those comments from people they come from people who are completely unqualified to make. And that's okay. It is what it is.
You've touched on
When I
it
was a blue belt, I thought I knew everything as well. So, hey.
You've touched on it a bit, Dave, and I guess for our listeners, particularly those from other gyms, like Dominance has dominated pretty much on the Australian competition scene this year. Won many of the state championships, even interstate. Won the nationals. I think won the adult male at Pan Pacs. And what is it exactly that you think? I mean, you've sort of talked about it a little bit in terms of the culture and the training methods of Dominance. What's your take on how, Dominance is just producing these unbelievably skilled competitors? What do you think that's coming from?
So you mentioned, like, for us, we say this all the time, that culture is king. We believe that culture is profoundly important to the success of the team, and to making a space that people want to be in. I've been in rooms overseas where the technical level is really good, but the vibe just sucks, and I've been in rooms where the technical level is amazing and it's full of world champions and the vibe's awesome. So it's like they're not mutually exclusive. And those rooms are awesome as well. Like some of these, that there's kids in the space, and people that are bringing their 3 and 4 year olds in to hang out, and so they're not mutually exclusive. So that's really clear. And I've got a 3 and a 6 year old, and I'm basically kind of raising my kids. They're in the gym all the time, so they're growing up in this space. So one of the things that's always been really important to me is making a space that I'm really comfortable to have my kids being in somewhat unsupervised, and knowing that the kind of people that they're around are going to be good for my kids to be around, and not the opposite. So having that filter as to make the decisions actually makes it really easy. Like if I'm deciding on what something I'm going to do with the space, the teams, the rules, how we approach things, like some of these cultural decisions, one of the things I think about is, like, is this going to make this better or worse for my kids to be in this space when I do this? And that actually, the answers are usually very, very obvious when I put it through that filter. So culture is king. That's one. But one of the things that we've been very, very good at is, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way as well, because I consider myself to be one of these people, is taking people who are average and creating a framework that allows them to be very successful. Like, we've got guys who on paper shouldn't be winning competitions, but do. And part of that is down to the framework that we use to run our classes. The other thing as well is that we understand that for some people, it just takes time. I feel like in some spaces, if you're not athletically, I don't want to say gifted, but at least we've got some guys who've got no athletic attributes. Like, they're not fast, they're not flexible, they're not mobile. Maybe they're a bit strong, and they're definitely not fast learners. And I think in some spaces those guys would kind of just get left to their own devices, and maybe would end up just kind of fading out because they're just, whether it's intentional or not, maybe the coaches go, this person's probably never going to be able to do much. My approach has always been that if the students put the time in, if they're on the mat and showing up, then I'll put the time into them. And then when I'm talking about this, so there's people that spring to mind who still compete these days. So I'm like, on paper, they shouldn't be doing that well, but they regularly podium at every comp that they go to and win as well, which is a testament to their hard work and being on the mat regularly. And but it's also a framework that allows the people who are talented. So we've got some people who have got the physical attributes. They've got amazing balance. They're like quite flexible and mobile. They can handle a high training volume, which I think is also really important to guys succeeding at a really high level. Is like, can your body actually just handle high training volume? But the framework allows those guys to succeed as well. So it's not exclusive just because the average guys can succeed with what we do. It doesn't mean that it's not good for the high level guys. The high level guys are also doing really well. But I think part of it is, if I had to put it down to one thing, that kind of leads the way for all the things that are happening, is that we care really deeply about what we're doing. And then that means the extra effort is in. So all the coaches spend extra time on the mat. You guys would see this whether you're at HQ or at Thomastown or Bentley, that the coaches are sticking around and helping students out before class, after class, during class. We've got clear goals that we've got in mind, and we try to work towards those goals. I think that's the other thing too, is that knowing that there's a comp coming up in 5 or 6 weeks, and we start working towards that as a team. And as I was saying before, that culture is king. Part of that culture is that the non-competitors are actually a really big part of the competition team's success. The level of everybody on the mat is what allows the competition team members to do really well. So we've got guys who don't compete who are really, really good. They just don't compete, and that's cool. But yeah, I think it's because we actually really care about what we're trying to do, and that drives us to put in the extra time and effort and pay attention to what's going on. If we notice something that's happening at competition with a student, we'll write some notes and then hit them up with that as soon as we possibly can, and just get back into the gym and start working on it. I mean, we had guys that were at the Pan Pacs for 3 days straight. The Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they were competing on the Friday and on the Sunday, and coaching or helping out the team on the Saturday, even when they weren't competing. And then Monday, they were in, and we had guys on the Monday who did 4 sessions that day. That's part of it too, is that not everyone's doing that, of course. We've got guys that are just coming in and doing their 1 session. We've got a lot of guys who will do a double every night. But so much of it is just that everybody is working towards a shared goal. And then obviously, as the coaches, we build a framework around the technical things that we're trying to develop. And then I think like a good way to think about this is, and I love this phrase, is that we get better because of each other, not in spite of each other. And when it's a combat sport, it can be really easy for a room to have a culture where people are just trying to use their training partners to get better, rather than one where we're trying to actually push each other up. Like, I'm not trying to climb over my teammates. We're all trying to come up together.
I don't know
We
if
got
Tom's
Brentos
still in
back.
here. I'm not too sure. I'll see how I go.
You've just come back, and then you've come back. We've maybe you haven't. Kim's come back. Brentos is gone.
There you go. We're not taking in turns with questions, one to each other. I'll jump in. And I'm not shy to. Sorry, Brentos. I don't know where you went.
That's right.
You disappeared.
That's right.
I don't
was
know if
gonna
that answered your
ask you
question the way that you're hoping, Kim. But
Yeah, no, 100%. And I feel that I definitely feel the level of care. It's I've not experienced it before. The amount of care that the coaches and my teammates actually give to me is what I feel at Dominance. Are you able to share with our listeners, Dave, some of the advice that you gave me? You actually, when I listened back to your last episode, you mentioned about it there about being an older grappler and some
Yeah.
ways that you can sort of stay on the mat and stay, competitive. And it's a tough gig being a Masters 5 and trying to hang with some of the young 20 somethings, that are heading to those world level tournaments.
Yeah.
Can you give to our listeners some of the advice that, as I said, you did share with me, and you also shared in the last episode that you're on?
Yeah. Look, I'm 46, nearly 47. So like I'm experiencing this myself as well. It's just much harder for me to keep up with the 20 something year olds now who are also, we're talking about brown and black belts. And even some of the younger belts, just the pace that they can keep. It's very, very difficult. So part of it is realigning your goals. So one of the things that I mentioned to you, Kim, when we're having a chat about, and it's a particularly challenging situation for you as well. So um, age and then size, uh, that makes it really tough. So we've got to be really smart about what our actual goals are for any training session. So the two main things that I mentioned to you were my number one thing is to, at the end of the session, I want to understand jiu-jitsu better than I did at the start of the session. And if I keep that in my mind, then I'm thinking about learning and exploring rather than just winning. And then the second thing is I want to be able to get on the mat and train again tomorrow. So if I go too hard or too reckless today, then that keeps me off the mat tomorrow potentially. And I'll give you an example. So there's a guy on the mathlete who's actually in his 40s as well. And he's a beast. He's one of the black belts. He's got a very, very good leg attack game and really good shoulder crunch and a few other things. And we would find that we would get stuck in these ruts. We've been rolling for years, and we would get stuck in these ruts where we would just kind of do the same sequences to each other every time we rolled, and the rolls kind of just looked the same. And this got to the point where I was like, I just need to start doing different things. Like the roles are going to be just about exploring and trying things. And I'm not actually fussed whether or not they work. What I'm interested in is getting the feedback of whether I should go left or right. And if I go left and it doesn't work, I'm like, all right, cool. That's not the way to do that. So I think about it as like just lots of little experiments, and I just want the information back. And then as soon as I started doing that, so again, this idea of being seeking and playful, where I'm trying to explore ideas and to play around with things. And what I found was for both of us, we both walked away from the roles going, oh man, that was so much better. We both actually learned something. And he and I we would roll, and most lunch classes when we would roll, we would tend to, after the lunch class, actually just grab each other and like, man, what about this spot? What about that spot? But we would have much more of those ideas come into play when our actual roles were more explorative as well. They were way more interesting, much more enjoyable, and we were just learning more. So pulling myself out of those kind of ruts, and you find that with certain people is they have a certain game that you play, and you have a certain game that you play, and if that game is working all the time on someone, then that's fine. But if it's kind of a bit stalematey, which with Mathlete and I got to, both of us are kind of having these roles where not much is happening. So we weren't really getting anything out of it, or very little, I should say, not nothing, but just adjusting my headspace away from winning to skill acquisition. And it like actually, you know what? I'll take it one step further back from skill acquisition. It's not even about skill acquisition. It's about, as I said before, about understanding jiu-jitsu better. So sometimes I'm not developing a skill when I'm rolling. I'm developing an understanding of jiu-jitsu better. Does that make sense? It's like, all right, well, we get to this spot, and when I do this, this kind of just roadblocks and nothing happens. But when I do this, that goes pear-shaped. When I do this, something interesting happens. I'm not quite moving the right way on this yet, so I haven't quite figured out the thing to do. Then after the lunch class, then we jump in that position and be like, all right, you're doing this, I'm doing this. What are you thinking about with that? I'm thinking about this. Well, what about if I do this? Yeah, that feels right. And then we're getting into this drilling idea of like we've built the understanding, we've figured out what we should do. Then we've just got to like get the movement pattern dialed in, then we can take that back and go live. So we might have talked about this last time, but if you think about the phases of learning, so there's not knowing what to do, there's knowing what to do, there's being able to do it, there's being able to do it with timing, so early enough, right? And this is a white belt thing. You think about all the baby white belts on the mat, and they get taught how to do a particular thing. So it gets to a spot where it's like, you can do the triangle. How do I do the triangle again? Sorry, I got to do this, that. Timing's gone. So it's like they know how to do the thing, but they don't have the timing yet. Yeah. So we go from not knowing to knowing, and knowing is different to being able to do it. And then there's being able to do it with the right timing, the right speed. So you kind of got to go through all those phases. Like you're in a spot where things aren't working. What do I actually need to do? I need to do this. How do I do that? What are the movement patterns for that? Can I get that dialed in so I can actually then react quickly enough in a live setting where my partner is going at a live pace as well? But it's mostly about, first and foremost, if you understand that, I want to understand jiu-jitsu better. I want to be able to train tomorrow. And then that will inform your intensity and volume. So you go, all right, I can't roll like a maniac anymore because I'm 50 years old and I'm small. I've got to pick my training partners, and I've got to focus on not trying to win all the time. And if someone grabs my head and starts twisting it, even if I know that I could dig in and be all right, I can not get tapped by this, but tomorrow I'm not going to be able to look left. Now I'm just like, yeah, it's all good. You got me, man. And I don't used to not be like that. I used to be like, nah, death or dishonor. But now I'm like, no, I want a few things. One, I want to be able to look left. Two, I don't want to be a grumpy arsehole around my kids because that's not their choice. And three, I want to get the role into a position where we're actually moving and playing again. Now, if I was training for a comp, where that line is might shift a little bit when I'm jumping in and doing comp rounds. That sort of like that would shift a little bit, but just day-to-day training, when I get stuck in those spots now, I'm just like, nah, it's all good. You got me. And then it's like, yeah, next time just don't let them put you in that spot. That's more the approach. And like these are things that I really try to encourage my junior belts to do as well, and the younger students on the mat, so they avoid injuries.
Yeah, 100%. No, I am most definitely am trying to do that. I must say it's quite humbling. You really do have to lose your ego because
Big time.
I'm getting my ass kicked, but it's like, oh, this is a good thing. I'm learning. But yeah, you really have to take that mindset.
You do, yeah, and also what I've experienced with that as well is as soon as I shifted gears from like I've got to be the best guy on the mat, I've got to be the guy that's rolling with the best five guys in the room and beating them all the time. And as I got older, and I'm not very big, I'm like 72 kilos, like I'm not big. And as I got older, and that just became harder and harder, the injuries start to accrue, becomes harder again. It was not very fun. And the moment I just went, you know what? How about we actually just try to just play and enjoy and explore? There's two things that happened. I started getting better so much faster. Like I was getting better at jiu-jitsu so much faster, but also I was really enjoying training. And the more I was doing that, the more my students would do it, the better they would get. Less injuries for me, less injuries for my part. Like just everything just gets better. That's why I'm like I was saying before, we were talking about skill development. Like Monday to Thursday is about skill acquisition, playing and exploring. Friday we have our hard hit out, and only once a week. We're pretty particular about that. It's like we don't really want our guys really hard comp training multiple times a week because it's not great for developing skills, and the load on the body is pretty gnarly. You're going to increase your chance of injuries, and also the mental fatigue that it creates is pretty intense too. But yeah, most of the time the training is more chill. And what we find as well is that teammates enjoy training with each other more. If every time you get on the mat it's a death match, people are too busy thinking about trying to beat their teammates, rather than trying to learn from each other and help skill each other up.
would this be a
But the other thing I'd say
conversation
as well
that
that's
you
really
would
important
have
is pick
though,
your training
Dave?
partners. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there's people on the mat that are malicious assholes that are trying to hurt you. But if you're 50 kilos, maybe don't roll with the 100 kilo dude. And like the 100 kilo dude might be actually know how to be a good training partner, but you've still got to try to move someone around that's twice your weight. And that's still a lot of load on your body. It just is. So um, yeah, pick your training partners, manage your training volume and your intensity. And the other thing I would say, which is something I mentioned to you as well, is you got to lift. And as boring as it might be, you just got to go and lift. It's just better for you.
100%.
And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a lot.
It's a fine line though, because you don't want to lift so much that you're overloading yourself there, and then you're fatigued for jiu-jitsu. So yeah, you got to lift smartly as
Yeah,
well, a bit like training partners.
spot on. So, and like, I'm certainly not a strength coach at all. I've got strength coaches that guide me in these things. But the one of the like um, one of the things that are kind of overarching the way that we approach lifting is we don't lift to physical or neural fatigue. We take the approach of we want to have like 1% gains, and not even going to see every day. But if you think about that, if you got 1% stronger each week, in 2 years' time, you are twice as strong as you were before. Now, yeah, it doesn't sound like much, but 1% stronger each week is actually, like, when it compounds, is actually a lot. And even that starts to become difficult to achieve after time. What we're really looking for is just maintaining good functional strength throughout your whole body and kind of straightening things out, for lack of a better phrase. Because jiu-jitsu, we tend to kind of like, we're twisted and contorted in weird ways. So we're trying to remain like functionally strong. Uh, I keep the volume and the intensity really low. I lift a couple of times a week, and that session takes me 20 to 30 minutes. And that's with a decent amount of rest as well. And I'm certainly not the strongest guy on the mat, but again, I'm basically doing the kind of like the minimal amount of lifting that I can to uh, to minimize injuries, maximize my functionality on the mat and strength gains without it taking away at all from any of my jiu-jitsu. So usually I'll, like, obviously you guys have been to HQ a bunch of times, so you know we've got quite a big strength and conditioning gym down the back. So I'll just do lunch class, and then I'm already warmed up from rolling, and then I'll just scoot down the back and just do my lifts, which is what a lot of the guys do. They'll just do their lifts after training, or sometimes before it, as a little bit of a warm-up. But I think lifting is non-negotiable when you're older. Recovery in general, I think, needs to be really smart. That means getting good sleep, not doing things doing things that piss off your body, and obviously nutrition and supplementation comes into play with that as well.
Regarding supplementation, Dave, what are your thoughts? Like the steroid use, steroid abuse, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it. Like it's so prominent now. Like you've got some young guys coming up through the ranks, and a lot of these guys are going off and competing overseas. Where do you see like this steroid use, like either ending or um, becoming something that really needs to be tested for? Like going over to World Masters, like you're walking around, you're just seeing like red people everywhere. Like, what, what's going on?
Man, it's a bit of a shame, right? Because we all love our sport, and the community is amazing. Just like any sport or any activity, like there's always going to be some plonkers here and there. But for the most part, the jiu-jitsu community is awesome. And but one thing that is disappointing is how many guys are on the gear. Um, some of those people they're still really, really nice people. They're really lovely and they love jiu-jitsu and all that sort of thing. But I get asked this question from time to time as well. Like, have you ever thought about it? It's never ever been a temptation for me. If you see my legs, it's very, very obvious that I'm not on the gear. But guys like, why? I'm like, why? And I feel like it's a bit of a, you're just being soft. Like just get better at jiu-jitsu. And there certainly are some arguments in the other direction of like, well, everyone else is on the gear and it allows you more training time, so you get more technical. And it's not like the guys who are on the gear aren't training. They're probably training more because they can handle higher training intensity and volume. So I'm not saying that they're lazy at all, but the other thing though is that I always answer them with, I really like being alive. Like I really like it. Being alive is awesome. And I don't particularly want to take 10 or 20 years off my life for the sake of chasing a medal that probably costs $5 to get made. That doesn't make sense to me. Like not even in the slightest. And for some people that does make sense. And I get that. That at some places, some teams, like it's quite prevalent. It's not what we do. And I'm much more interested in for myself and for the team members as well to have a healthier life. It just being alive is awesome. I don't having heart attacks. No, not into it. There's some guys out there. I think it was Wagner Rocha ended up in hospital. What was it, 6 months ago with heart failure? That's not a heart attack, man. That's heart failure. That's it. That your heart's fucked for the rest of your life.
He's younger than you,
And like
yeah.
he's not
He's
even
only like
50.
40. Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
42, I think.
Yeah.
exactly. Now he ended up competing a few months later on Who's Number One, but it's like, bro, that's heart failure.
Yeah.
Now, someone might try to argue that that's not from the gear. I'm like, well, if it's not, it's a bit of a coincidence. But, and I'm not saying that Wagner Rocha is a bad dude at all. Like it's like, this is not a comment on him as a person, and they're his choices. I mean, ADCC is not tested, so but where it's going to end up with the sport, and whether or not they should just do testing, it's hard to imagine them doing any testing to levels that make a significant difference because it's just expensive. Yeah. So I think they only test some of the weight classes, like every second weight class of the black belts of the people who podium, like something like that. So it's certainly not a not very thorough testing.
Yeah, like there's a Facebook group called BJJ for over 40s or something. And if you do a search in there for TRT or steroids, it like the amount of posts is just ridiculous. Like you open that twice a week and 100% there will be a, hey guys, I'm looking at going on TRT or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it really
Yeah,
is
and
prevalent. Like, I'm walking
I
around
would
World
suggest that
Masters,
there's a
it's so noticeable.
I'd suggest that there's probably somewhat of a gap or a difference between TRT and then just blasting the
Steroids.
gear like crazy.
Yeah.
There's definitely a difference between those two.
Yeah.
But again, like just I like being healthy. Um,
Yeah.
and I like being alive. I've never it's never been a question to me about whether or not it's something that makes sense to do. It's never made sense at all. I mean, and I've always thought of it as I don't even want to say cheating. Like obviously in some sports, some organizations or some federations, it is like IBGF. It's cheating, so there is that. But I also think it's a bit weak. I think that's the other thing that I'm trying to get at. Is like, no, you're being soft, mate. Like, just get better at jiu-jitsu and do the things. Maybe that's um, maybe that's not the way plenty of other people think, but that's all good.
No.
But like, I don't.
Really, yeah,
I'm sure I've competed against plenty of guys over the years who are on the gear. Like, I'm quite sure. And so some of the guys I've walked away from just going, holy shit, that dude was strong. But it doesn't make me go, fuck, I gotta go out there and get on the gear and lift more. Like I walk away going, I just gotta get better at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like if I got the technical answers, that'll solve the problems.
100%. We're nearly out of time, Dave. Thank you so much for jumping on, especially at short notice.
My
We've
pleasure.
just got some pop quiz questions that Brentos is going to quickly ask you. You can make them as
Awesome.
short or as long answers as you like.
Try to be short. It's not my strong suit though.
What, being short? I thought you were good at that, mate. All right, let's go. iPhone or Samsung?
iPhone, mate. No one wants that green message bubble. You're a peasant if you got a green message bubble.
Strength or flexibility?
Are you talking about which one I have or which one's better?
which one you would prefer to have?
Well, I have flexibility, but there's part of me that would just love to be like just 90 kilos and just bullshit strong just for a week and just wreck everybody and intentionally just not do good jiu-jitsu. Just crush them with pure strength just for a week.
Pasta or rice?
Say that one again.
Pasta or rice?
Oh, no brainer, rice all day.
Beautiful. Chicken or steak?
Steak, mate. Come on, bro.
I like it. Did they miss a trick by making the match Marcelo Garcia versus Lockie and not Marcelo versus Dave Hart?
Well, interestingly, I think I'm one of the only guys that have fought both of them. So I fought Lockie twice. One of them was for the ADCC trials that I ended up going to. And the other time was way back in the old day, we had a competition called the gi or not to gi, where you could compete in the gi or not. And he would have been like 16 years old back then because Lockie started training when he was a kid. He was trying to leg lock me even when he was 16. He definitely tried to leg lock me in the trials as well. And obviously I fought Marcelo. That didn't go that well for me.
Go well for
So
many people, mate.
I think honestly, I think they've got the right matchup for this one. I think this is an awesome match. I'm very, very interested to see this one. They're both awesome. And the thing is, they're both lovely. It's kind of one of these things where you don't want to see either of them lose.
Yeah.
But it is a really interesting matchup. I think they've nailed that match.
I agree. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's great.
What's your favorite belt that you've been at, mate?
Ooh, and they're all pretty good for different reasons. But the first thing that popped into my head then was purple belt. I think purple belt, like things were just, there was just this kind of like sweet spot with you got a lot of skills. I was still a little bit younger then, so you kind of have that like insane confidence that you have when you're too young to know any better. But yeah, and it was just a good belt. But I also love being an older black belt too, man. I think that's one of the cool things about jiu-jitsu is it's awesome at every age and at every belt. Regardless of what age you are at each belt, if you manage your training well. It's kind of crazy that a combat sport exists where you can still train competitively and compete when you're 50 years old. Like you can't do that in freestyle wrestling. You can't even they do have masters divisions in judo, but man, training judo is so hard on the body.
Yeah.
And you certainly can't do it in the striking sports. Like jiu-jitsu is amazing in so many ways, but that's one of them is like, I've got students who are in their late 60s who are still who still train and they hang competitively with the young guys on the mat. That's crazy.
Yeah.
How awesome is that? But yeah, purple belt's the first one that pops into my mind.
That's cool. We get quite a few saying purple, and it was funny as you were talking before about like the difference between like learning and playing. That's what I'm finding at purple belt. Like the difference between learning, playing, and knowing that you don't have to win every round. Like every time you're out there, like you don't have to win. So I think for me,
Yeah.
that's what I'm enjoying at the moment. Like that difference between learning and playing and relaxing and somebody passed my guard. That's cool because I was trying to do this and you're shit at it, but that's all right. Stay with it and it'll come.
I
Yeah,
think you
you're
develop
right.
the
I think
most at
also,
purple as well. That's my thoughts.
yes.
To do right. Yeah, I've got
Yeah,
two more for you, Dave.
go for it.
All right.
Yep.
Can you drive a manual car?
Yes,
From the country, of course he can.
mate.
All right, mate. And the last question will be the thing: do we put this episode out or not? Do you wear Crocs?
No, bro. No, mate. I still like nah. Nah, man.
No. We can put this episode out. The
Yeah, it's
non-Croc
like
wearers are celebrating around the world.
yes.
Dude, there's
Awesome.
obviously heaps of guys wear them into the gym. I'm like, come on, and like you got to try them. They're the most comfortable thing in the world. I'm like, I'm never gonna know. I wear Harvey Hunters all the time. They're awesome. Like,
Yeah.
why do you wear any? Why do you wear? Why? Why? Why wear Crocs? Don't do it.
Thank you, Dave, as I said, for giving up your time. And
My pleasure.
we'll have this episode out in 2 weeks. So, we look forward to sharing this around. Brentos, do you want to do the wrap up?
Oh, looks like he's
that
reconnecting.
was awesome, Dave. I appreciate you coming on, mate. Thank you very much. That's it for another episode of Roll or Die. Remember to like, rate, share the episode. Check it out on YouTube as well. Like, that's always a good place where you can have a look. Share it on your pages if you can. We'd appreciate that. I think this is an awesome episode for coaches, gym owners, and for athletes as well. So appreciate your knowledge, Dave. I appreciate the nicknames that you give me, and look forward to seeing you at the next comp that we're at. And everybody else, thank you for checking out another episode of Roll or Die. Peace out. See you soon.
Thanks, guys.